right. Hello, everyone. Good morning from Seattle. We are the Romanian Film Festival team. Welcome to our first live stream on Facebook with our special guests, Raluca Negulescu-Balac and Radu Ciorniciuc. I am Otilia Baraboy. I'm the executive director of the American Romanian Cultural Society that has been curating the Romanian Film Festival for the past 7 years. The theme this year is Resilient Together, and is in order to explore the possibilities that film and storytelling in general have to change the world within the world and ourselves. I will briefly introduce our guest, Raluca Negulescu-Balac, who is the executive director of the UiPath Foundation. This is the second time Raluca comes to the festival. This time it's virtual. Last year she came in person to the film festival in Seattle. So she is here in a double capacity as the Romanian Film Festival partner and also as the partner of the documentary Acasa, My Home. I will say a few words about UiPath Foundation. It is a non-profit organization founded by UiPath, the Romanian unicorn you probably know about. They were founded in January 2019, and they have their headquarters in Bucharest, Romania. Their mission is to support underprivileged children to reach their potential and thrive together with their communities and families through equal access to education and the development of 21st century skills. So far, they have been implementing programs in Romania and Bucharest in Ferencváros. If you are from Romania, you know about Ferencváros, in Cluj, in Galați, in Vaslui, in Botoșani, but also in India, in Bangalore. Thank you, Raluca, for being here. And I will say a few words about Radu Ciorniciuc, who is the director of Acasa, but originally he is a journalist. So his film today is even more so striking. It brings a fresh perspective on documentary making, actually. So Acasa, My Home is the first Romanian documentary selected in the official competition at Sundance Film Festival and the winner of World Cinema Documentary Special Jury Award for Cinematography, which is again striking because you use the photographer, right? Not a cinematographer to make the film. The film has been selected in over 60 festivals worldwide, winning 15 awards and being shortlisted for the European Film Awards documentary section. Congratulations. The documentary presents a compelling tale of an impoverished family living on the fringes of society in Romania, fighting for acceptance and their own version of freedom, and we'll talk more about it. It submerges the viewer into a powerful emotional journey of adaptation to the challenges of urban life with all the struggles related to housing, education, and social integration. Thank you, Radu, for being here. We're very honored to have you. And we've been following your success over the social media, and it's amazing that we're able to present the film at the 7th edition of the Romanian Film Festival. So I will start with a few questions for Radu, and then we'll follow up with Raluca, and then we'll open up the floor for questions from the audience. So Radu, tell us more about it. How did it all start? What is the story of Acasa? You being a journalist investigating very powerful matters as modern slavery, migrants' rights, and how did you find the story, or did the story find you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here and for screening the film in such an important platform, not only for Romanians, but I've had my eyes on you guys for a while now, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to share the panel with Raluca and you. First of all, it was a strange mix 4 years ago when we started filming for this project. I just went there to make a reportage about how the government was planning to change this abandoned landfill close to the middle of Bucharest into a natural reservation and giving this Very strange place, the same protection status as the virgin forest in Transylvania. So it was a huge thing, especially for me, who I was, like was living 2 streets away from from the Delta. So along with my partner and the screenwriter of the film, Lina Vtovi, we just went there to make some interviews and just to see what are the plans for the place. And soon after, we met 2 of the boys. It was a very strange image to have, again, close to the posh city center in Bucharest. Um, 2 half-naked kids with sunburned hair, and there's brown skin, and we just followed them, and they were very curious, and they took us to their father, and this is how I met the family. I think it took us a week or two to understand that a reportage wouldn't do justice for the stories, knowing that the family was about to have their lives, turned upside down because of the new status, because they would have to leave, because they were totally unprepared for what was about to come for them. So, but this was one of the reasons that we continued to film. Weren't necessarily sure that we're going to make a feature-length film. We just got more and more absorbed while we filmed through the months and then through the years, and then we most importantly, it was the meeting with the producer, with Monica Lazoran Gorgan. I think we were like 2 years into the filming process, and it was about time to approach someone who has experience in film industry, also has experience in recommending people who can handle the hundreds of hours of footage that we were gathering, and the many stories that we could have told, what we could have told with that material. So it was. It wasn't necessarily a very conventional production process. I think it's what made the film fresher in many ways. And to return to your initial question, it was the relationship that the family had with the nature. It was their relationships that fascinated me and made me stay a bit more to understand the story's context, first of all, because the story can, having experience in covering stories, let's say in disadvantaged communities, it's always tricky, and it's always a danger if you don't if you're not very careful in how you create the context in which you place these stories. So it was a fluid process, and lucky enough we've had the right people to join us, and to make the film stronger, to create a better understanding of the family stories and so on.
This is amazing, Radu. So the story, in a way, found you, and now with hindsight, was there a message, maybe in your subconscious as you were filming it, that you were probably able to articulate better for yourself now that you have to bring the documentary into the world, and you were invited to all these prestigious festivals? And what is the message, if there is a message?
There's all sorts of messages, I guess. The story indeed found me, but it found me in a place where I think I was more prepared to take it forward and bring it to this point, I think. And it's a message of tolerance in many ways. It's a message of when I started the story, I came after 5 years of hardcore investigations in all over the world, and dealing with very heavy, with some very heavy dramas, and also a very heavy work process and so on. So I was a bit uprooted in some ways, and discovering this family and discovering, like, taking apart from the rough, let's say, the rough context in which the family was living. It was a family who was, let's say, functioning after in a very natural and let's say universal way of of just being a family. So this was a major inspiration for me, and this was it's also where I found a bit more about my needs, my personal needs of you know of being of building my own roots, let's say.
In one of your interviews, you compared Jika, the father of 9 children, to Robinson Crusoe. Did you relate to this story? You know, the man who reinvents society around him and takes it in. And
Yes, I mean, Jika, the father of the children, took some decisions that are so easy to judge, and you know, being a father myself now, you know, it's even harder not to be judged, you know, like not to be harsh on some of his decisions, let's say. But it was also when I became a father that I understood that we get so, like, we can, out of our, like, desire to protect our loved ones and our need to protect our loved ones, we can make some very, very weird decisions, you know. And it's how I connected with Jika in the end, and it's how I managed to find the resources in myself to offer him the right amount of empathy to understand, you know, like him, and then not to be so judgeful anymore, because he's, you know, he's the true patriarch. He's someone who I don't want to be for my family, for example. And so we always had these differences in values and in ways of seeing life. But you know, it was in the point where I became a father myself, when I understood him, and I said, man, you know, like, if I was so pissed off about, you know, society, and if I was so hurt, I would probably want to keep my daughter and keep my family away from it all. So
yes,
it was an important point in the editing process, in the writing process as well. So I think this is when the film got grew even more. Yeah. So
Raudo, what is the family situation right now? And I have in the chat a question about if you're thinking of a sequel.
the family situation now is, I think, in many ways it's better than it would have been if the state would have handled their situation. So they have their own place. Most of the kids are going to school. Three of the adults are working in the park as rangers and tourist guides. So I would say the shock, you know, has passed in many ways. There's still a lot to go, but I'm quite optimistic about their situation, although they have a lot of other problems. And unfortunately, Jika has passed away a month ago. So this was the most terrible news we've had, you know, regarding the family. And the situation is not, like, emotionally, you can imagine that, you know, the pillar of the family is gone. So now they're trying to make sense of how they'll go on. So yeah, but on the bright side, again, the kids are going to school. They're supported by many people, including UiPath Foundation and the wonderful people there. So there's still hope for many of them, and luckily there are some brilliant people to support them, and they have been there for some years now.
Thank you, Radu. And now, Raluca, can you tell us more about this partnership? Why did the UiPath Foundation decide to support Acasa? How does it relate to your mission?
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for making this discussion possible, Otilia and the American Romanian Cultural Society team. It's a pleasure and a source of joy for us to see our partners together in a conversation that aims to raise awareness on our work, on important issues, social issues in Romania and across the world. last year, as Otilia mentioned in the beginning, we were partners of the festival. And even before starting the partnership with a documentary, Acasa, we understood that art has this amazing power of conveying powerful social messages. So we've joined ARC's team last year in the festival in Seattle, and I remember we had a debate there as well about access to education and the struggle of children in poverty. And last year, towards the end of the year, we met Radu and Acasa team. They were very close to going to Sundance, and we joined forces because we believe in the power of the documentary Acasa to convey so many messages that are unfortunately invisible. I mean, we are so connected to this world because this is our mission. I personally have been involved in developing programs for kids struggling with poverty for more than 11 years. But so many people are disconnected from these realities, and these realities are very harsh. And I think that Acasa, which is, from my perspective, an artistic piece of jewelry, but also with a very powerful social message, makes visible these stories. And these are the stories of the generations to come. And as many of you know, in Romania, we have the largest population of children at risk of poverty from the entire European Union. So this is a real issue that will affect our entire society. It's not only about these kids and these families, it's about how we become resilient together and find solutions. And it's not only about individual resilience, but also about system resilience, because we're looking now of how the educational system, unfortunately, is failing most of the kids in Romania, regardless of their social background. But for the kids in poverty, it's even more difficult. So we want to create this forums of debates to discuss these issues. And I don't think there's one entity or one person that can solve these issues, but we can come together and find solutions and systemic solutions. And I think that's important. That's why we are partners with the festival and also with the documentary, because we need to take these messages further. And I think it's essential for all of us.
Thank you, Raluca. You said it so well. The Romanian Film Festival's mission is to create social change through film and art. So I think the three of us here have so many things in common. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that most marginalized families go through? I know you've been a social worker for many years. You started yourself as a volunteer when you were in high school. You have an amazing, career in this field. Can you tell us what some of the things that you've encountered in your work?
So I think we're talking a lot about access to education when it comes to children struggling with poverty, but access to education, to quality education, is a quite complex journey for the kids and for the families. And when we're talking about challenges and access to education for poor kids, we should look at the entire ecosystem in which these kids are living. And I myself come from a low-income family, and I understand to some extent that the personal struggles the kids have. But at the same time, I feel like I've been so privileged to have the support of my family to pursue my educational path, which is very often difficult for the kids who struggle with poverty, because even though the parents want to support them, there are so many issues related to survival. When you're in a permanent survival mode, it's quite difficult to go to school. If you don't have enough food or proper clothes, or if you're bullied in school because of your ethnic or racial background, I mean, that adds up in time, and it's a pressure and such a distress that these kids are facing. And it's quite difficult to cope with the challenges at school. and we need to look in a systemic way to this situation. I mean, we need to look at living conditions. We need to look to the economic resilience of the families to bounce back out of poverty and find means to be better off. We need to look at the relationship between the parents and the community, the teachers. We need to look at how public institutions create the proper systems of support so these kids stay in school and they thrive. There's a very interesting a report from the World Bank that looks at the human capital index, and for Romania it says that a child that is born in Romania this year will reach by age 18 only 50% of his or her potential. I think we can do way better than this. We can do this together, and of course that education is a gateway to prosperity, but we also need to consider all other issues that the kids are facing. And that's why the UiPath Foundation, we offer integrated support for the kids we work with across Romania and India. We offer scholarships and school supplies and clothes and whatever is necessary for the kids to focus on school and not think that they don't have food on their table the next day. So I think that's it's very important to look at this from all angles, and I think that Acasa shows to some extent this reality. And I've been working in marginalized communities for so many years, and Acasa is unique in so many ways, because I mean the story of the family is unique in their journey, but the challenges they face on so many levels are universal, and I've seen them in so many families and communities where I've been working.
Thank you, Raluca. Radu, now I have a question for you. Did you perceive any racism or discrimination against the family that you documented and you followed for 4 years? Can you tell us more? It's pretty obvious in the film, but can you tell us more about it?
Yes, unfortunately, what you can see in the film, in some of the scenes, it was part of the daily life of the family. It was, and it was so strange especially for the little ones, because they've learned that they're Roma when they moved into the city. So they didn't have this in mind until their neighbors told them not to play with the other kids on the street. So that was quite painful, and it was quite shocking, to say the least, for the little ones, who were quite curious again, and they're very sociable children. They're very easygoing. So unfortunately, like they've been almost every day they had to suffer because of their race, in school, in the public transport, on the streets, not to mention hospitals and so on. So every time they had a big problem, we had to come and join them and bang on doors, or just being bodyguards. So it was quite painful, and unfortunately we live in a society who's quite where racism is very deeply rooted.
Do you think the father wanted to protect them, Jika, because the oldest, Vali, gets out of this protecting environment? He's 12, and I read somewhere that he got hit by a car, and then this is when, once they go out, they realize they're Roma, actually, and the discrimination. They realize they're being discriminated against.
Most definitely, discrimination was one of the reasons that Chika, who was behind all that macho appearance, he was a very, very sensitive man, and he had suffered himself when he had a good job in the communist days and so on. But when the 90s came and communism fell, Romania went through a very rough some very rough years. So his factory closed down, and he ended up more or less jobless. He did something stupid. I never know the exact reason. He never told me, or he told me different variations of the same story. But what was clear to me is that he suffered a great deal in prison. And it was when he got out that he isolated himself. And I think, apart from many other abuses, racism was one of the most painful one for him while he was in prison. Having having a good social status in the communism days, and falling like that just a few years after, made him a bit, made him not, made him who he was.
Yes, thank you, Radu. Raluca, I do have a question for you. So, is education the way out of poverty, and how can we talk about poverty being connected intimately with discrimination? Because we're talking about discrimination against Roma children and families, but also there is discrimination against poor families in general, right?
So I do believe that education is the way out of poverty for underprivileged children, but at the same time, I don't think we should treat this as a very in a very simplistic way. We need to look at the complexity of the system that that is around these kids, and that we need to look at the cycle of poverty that keeps this intergenerational poverty and exclusion. So yeah, it's important to have a more integrated way of looking at the situation. And I think for the first time since the revolution, one of the reports related to discrimination in Romania showed that Romanians are less inclined to discriminate against Roma. So this is a positive development when it comes to how Romanians position themselves in relation to the Roma minority. So there's a progress there, and we shouldn't deny this. But at the same time, Roma across the country are really struggling in being accepted in communities, in schools, and indeed discrimination brings a supplementary layer of difficulty, and it's a factor of stress for the kids. And I've met kids who were refusing to come back to school. For instance, in Ferental, which is a slum in Bucharest, where I've worked for almost 8 years. There were kids who didn't want to come back to school because they were treated so badly because of their ethnicity that they just refused to come back to school. And that sort of environment, unfortunately, still persists. It exists in a community very close to the center of Bucharest, but it's present in villages and cities across the country. And I think, we need to work in depth in how we deal with this issue, because when poverty overlaps with discrimination, the things get even more complicated. But we need to think of a way in which education can include more a consistent curricula on anti-discrimination and acceptance. And I think this, there are people advocating for a special course on this, and there are people advocating for having sort of a transversal approach in which acceptance of different minorities is integrated in everything we study at school. And I'm more I'm supporting more the second approach, because I think this needs to be ingrained in the way we raise our kids to accept others regardless of their social and ethnic background. But this takes time, and I think we need a very mature educational system and a mature society to include this. But I do think that there have been a lot of steps in improving the situation, but we're still far away from from this, and more work needs to be done.
Yeah, there's very little known about the long history of Roma slavery in Romania, for instance. And this is an issue that connects us with Black Lives Matter in the recent movements in the United States. So I think many of our viewers are probably thinking about the two together. There is a question now, just to step up a little bit more into the message of the and the title of this documentary. So the Acasa, my home, gives us food for thought, and it makes us question what it means to be home and have a home. So what is Acasa? What is home after all? Radu.
It's whatever makes us feel safe and loved, and it's for me. Acasa is always the people in my family, and in many times it's the people I work with, and Acasa is something that again makes us feel loved and tolerated, and it makes us resilient towards the everyday problems of what it is to be in a family, or what it is to be at home. So I think it's whatever makes us feel good inside ourselves, first of all, and in relationship to the world as well.
Raluca, this is a question for you as well, if you want to add something to it.
It's very much in line with what Radu said, but I also think that home is where we reach our potential. It's a place where we feel safe to reach our potential and to be the best version of ourselves. I think home is sort of an inner experience. Home can be our education, it can be our choices in different directions. I think it's more than a physical place. It's also it's an inner experience as well.
And now I have a question, a tough one for both of you. Radu as a journalist, and activist, I would say, and Raluca is a social worker for so many years, and the executive director of UAPA Foundation now. So what do we need to do as a society to make those marginalized, families feel welcome and at home in our communities?
This is it's a tough question, but I have a very simple answer. I think it's enough for for us to try at least every day to be just good human beings, and aware of not only of our needs, but also the people around, the needs of the people around us. So it's these pieces of work, like having programs in communities that need support for education. It's these works that are being done by journalists and filmmakers. It's work done by festivals who offered us a platform for showing our art, and also hosting these kinds of discussions. It's all of these small drops that we need to constantly put in this ocean, who can be easily radicalized if we don't do the work, if we don't make some opposition every day. And it's opposition, it's just it can be a hello to someone who really needs that hello in a day. So it's just the small things that are keeping this world as balanced as it is today, although it's not balanced at all. But imagine the world without all these.
Raluca, would you like to add something to what Radu said?
Yeah, well, I've worked as a community organizer, and that started after a fellowship in the United States. So I've learned about community mobilization, and I'm a true believer into the agency of each individual to challenge the system. Yeah, I think we need changes in this respect. We need more awareness to move people to action, to really change the society we live in. I mean, I think it's creating this spaces of debates is essential, as Rod was mentioning, because yeah, we can't change what's happening by ourselves, and we also need to inflict sort of systemic changes, but it takes you need to take each piece, each rock to move an entire mountain. So I think this is the sort of approach we need to each of us to contribute to this change. And yeah, being uncomfortable and talking about what's happening in Romania in terms of access to education, poverty, racism, that's part of the process. So I think, yeah, it's essential to go through this process.
Yes, thank you, Radu and Raluca. I do have to mention that in Seattle, there's many debates around homelessness, and there's a local nonprofit that that wears the name of Just Say Hello, and it just presents pictures and stories behind the people we never say hello to, that we cross in the streets, but we never say hello to. So I think this is the first step, and probably a second step would be to create a space where they can express their own voice and tell their stories themselves. And again, through education, through letting the entire society know their histories and letting them tell their stories and histories, it's a second, another vital measure. If let's say when somebody sees your movie, your documentary rather, what would be the one idea you would want them to leave, to have after seeing the movie? What would be this, and how would this idea be able to generate a change of attitude and perspective necessary, for action later on?
I would say that one of the most important things and aims and central aims of our work with the film is to show the world, not like to show the world in nuances and not in blacks and whites. The truth, it's always in the nuances rather than in how some entities are creating perceptions which people take as truths. And I think this is the basis of tolerance, isn't it? Like just trying to go beyond the obvious blacks and whites in every situation in life, like, and it's a sort of push we need to make to get a better understanding of the world around us. But it's also a process that we need to put ourselves into. It's the work we need to do with ourselves that gets us a better understanding of our external reality, I guess. So I guess this is it. Just it's very easy to jump into conclusions. It's very easy to judge. It's very easy to it's very lazy also.
Right.
But in order to become a bit wholer, a bit better, rounder as human beings, we need a bit of digging into ourselves, and this might get us a bit closer to, if not to the truth, to honesty, which is a very comfortable place to be in.
Radu, I do have a question from the chat about it, from Annabella Zagura. How has the making of the movie changed your own perspective on life, family, and society?
Well, that's an easy one. I mean, I got into as a bachelor, and I got out as a father with my own family. So I got, let's say, very inspired
Oh,
about these 4 years, and I think I'm more at my peace with myself and I'm more confident and in future. I'm yeah, I think I'm blessed in so many ways, and I think most of the things that I am grateful for now come from the past 4 years, which for me has been a great school in so many ways, professionally, personally, and so on.
it's
So
that Jika has now, there was a number of times when he was saying that he's a father. It seemed that for him that was the most wonderful accomplishment in his life. The fact that he was a father, the father of.
yeah, man, I can totally relate to that. I'm a very proud father myself. So
Thank you. Now I have a question for Raluca. Um, what do you think it helped the progress made against discrimination, Raluca, in your long career in this field?
Well, well, the progress made at the level of the Romanian society I was mentioning earlier.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Well, I guess it's the invisible work of so many people and organizations that committed their lives to promoting human rights, to supporting the most marginalized. And these are the people and the organizations that you don't see on TV. You don't. Their work is not visible, although it's instrumental to really creating systems of support for the most vulnerable. And I think, yeah, I want to mention that we still have a lot of work to do, and I think some of us will dedicate our entire lives to fight discrimination and marginalization. But still, I think that the work of these people needs to be celebrated. And these are the community workers and the people working at the grassroots every single day, being in contact with the communities, advocating for policy changes and making a case for the ones who are not listened to because they have a voice. And more civic groups are articulating their ideas, and they're putting pressure on public authorities to change the situation in their communities. But still, we have a long way ahead. I think that made the change, and this is also a source of energy for all the people who do this, because it shows that yes, this is possible, and we need to, gather all our strength and force to continue our work.
Thank you. I do have a question from Ilana, our colleague and co-founder of the film festival. Awesome movie and fascinating story. In the movie, it states that Jika graduated high school. Why did he not send his kids to school? In their testimonies, his kids resent him because of this.
I think it's for the same reason that it was very hard to get them to school for many reasons. I mean, even if you wanted to, it would have been close to impossible to do it. I mean, the kids didn't have an address, like a formal address to where they could be registered, so they didn't have documents. Without any documents, there's no access to education, medicine, and so on. So there were some attempts throughout the years of some people wanting to enroll the kids to school, but they just couldn't do it without them having a formal residency. So, but I mean, in many ways, this Jika was profiting from their lack of education, from his wife's lack of education. Like they were depending on him, and I'm not sure, and I hope he wasn't doing this, with a conscious way, but it was the result of it. They were depending on him in their relationship to the outside world. He was the sole mediator, and Yeah, but he he never told me that. But he never told me that he wants his kids in school. But he was very supportive when we came up with the solution of taking the kids and to the school every weekend where they could learn how to read and write. Do this, I think, in the first year of filming, and this was the major step in the kids' confidence in relationship with the people outside the Delta, and Jika was very supportive of this from the very start when we told him. At first he was scared because he thought that he'll end up without them.
Mm.
To be honest, his first reaction to this was, okay, I'm going to take them myself, and I'm going to show them how to stay in their benches, and I'm going to tell them, like what to do just for a week, and then they'll be okay. So he was very anxious to let them leave, and yeah,
He was very attached. Oh.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. I do have another question for both of you from Theodor Stan from Immigration Research Forum in Washington, D.C. Congratulations on this socially engaging cultural product. Both interlocutors have used the word resilience repeatedly. How would you, through your interventions, envisage having an impact in these individuals' lives and nurture that toolkit of coping with adversity? And how may we support that continued work?
This is a good question for Raluca to answer. It has an academic twist to it, which I like. But if Raluca wants to take the lead on this, I think.
Yeah. So I will talk a bit about our interventions at the UiPath Foundation. Even though we're a very young organization and will soon be 2 years old, we do have a series of programs that are interconnected and that focus a lot on building sustainability in this community. So we work in 5 areas of Romania. We focus on supporting children from poor communities through a 360-degree package, educational package. That means scholarships and access to educational activities focused on literacy, math, digital skills, and English. And of course, we support these kids, and we're monitoring the impact these programs have on their school motivation and their 21st century skills, and how they work better together and collaborate and develop, and that's very important. At the same time, these kids are not separated from the communities where they live in. They're part of their families, and they're part of communities, and they go to school well until the pandemic came, and of course most of the kids disconnected from school. We managed to keep these kids in school. They all have devices, and they're very connected to online school and to our educational activities. But we're also looking at how we can empower teachers to support the kids and see potential among children from vulnerable communities. And in this respect, we work with a very impactful partner, a strategic partner. I'm talking about Teach for Romania, and we're piloting together a way of democratizing their work in communities across Romania in such a way that they can take their know-how to as many teachers as possible who struggle to support children from poor communities. And then we look again, okay, these kids come in school, but at the same time, some of them face different educational gaps. So how can we build the future generation real chances to education? So we focus on early education. And these interventions overlap in communities, and we're looking at ways in which these communities can become more attentive to the needs of the kids. And that means working with the schools, with the principal in the school, with the public institutions there, and looking at ways in which we can bring more and more kids on board. So we work with a network of strategic partners, and it wouldn't be possible to do this by ourselves, and we believe in the power of collaboration, because the issue we're tackling is so complex, so we need to approach it from so many angles. And I think when it comes to support, of course, you can support directly the family if you want to give a concrete support to the family, and you can support our work at UIVAS Foundation or the work of our partners who are Teach for Romania, Viduro, Inima de Copil Foundation, and Bună Ziua Copii din România Association, and also Policy Center for Romanian Minorities. And I think it's important to look at Pro Patrimonio Foundation as well. And that's, I think it's important to look at the grassroots work of these organizations. And we work with a very diverse group of kids, and maybe around 20% of them are of Roma ethnicity. And I think it's important to understand that not all kids struggling with poverty, if there's this overlap between poverty and ethnicity is very common in Romania, but there are also kids from other communities that struggle with this kind of adversity, and we're working with all these kids in order to give them equal chances to the future. And talking about resilience, I think we're talking about resilience at so many levels. We need to look at economic resilience, we need to look at emotional resilience, because I think we're going as a society through a huge trauma with the pandemic. And I think also this failure of the system to keep kids connected to education will reflect in some really negative trends in the years to come. And yeah, I think resilience is part of how we move forward, and it's for the kids in these families, it's maybe a lifestyle because they face adversity every single day, but you can bounce back until you get to a certain point. I mean, you can't do that forever. That's why we need systems of support that enable these kids and these families to bounce back from this collective trauma we're currently facing.
Raluca, there is another question that kind of is complementary to the previous one. How can we support? How can the Romanian diaspora that left and has its heart in Romania, how can we, in concrete ways, how can we support the work that you do?
You can definitely donate for our work, for the work of our partners. You can, we've been, yeah, so I think just donating, and also you can volunteer with your know-how and expertise for this, for different organizations that work on this specific issue. So there are ways, and there are hubs you can look at. You can donate your birthday to support a certain cause. You can go connect with the Romanian United Fund, who support many causes in Romania. So I think it's yeah, there are many ways to get involved, and I'm happy to hear this question, because that means that yeah, the more people get involved, the bigger are the chances to move things forward.
We are actually, the Romanian Film Festival and ARCS are partners with the Romanian United Fund, and there is talk about founding a federation of Romanian organizations in the US. So we'll be stronger for the communities here, but for what needs to be done back home. And I do have a question for Radu about the film, and I kind of waited till the last moment, because I listened to a documentary about how you filmed, how you wanted to be in the shoes of these children, and you kind of followed them with the camera. And again, it's about, can we tell the story, or how can we help them tell their stories? But I think you wanted to tell as much as possible, to tell the story through how they see life, right? You tried. And George Roth has a question for you in this sense. And How was it possible? I mean, was there any acting involved? Because he finds it, I can't find the question now, but yeah. So was the camera hidden in this, he gives an example, the scene where the girlfriend tells the boyfriend that she's pregnant. I don't remember the name of the boy is Vali. Was the camera hidden? The scene is amazing. They're beyond being good actors. So I think you did a wonderful job being as much as possible, kind of transcending your role and seeing their stories through their eyes. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, yes, indeed. We try to overcome the, let's say, idea of making a film about a family. So we try to make it from within the family, to try to give the characters enough space to tell us life, how they, like in their terms, in their truths terms. This wasn't necessarily easy, but the dialogue scenes were also part of the. I mean, making a film is not always about the filming, the actual filming. It's also, I come from a writing background, so just listening and just staying in a corner or developing relationships with my characters comes quite natural. So I was, and I still am very well aware of what's happening with every one of my characters in almost every point of their life. So, for example, when the pregnancy came up, Vali told me that like he was scared and he wasn't prepared to be a father. He didn't want to end up like his father and so on. And because they didn't have a very let's say they didn't have the exercise of communication. The people in the family, they wouldn't communicate like let's say most of us do. They wouldn't express their emotions. So we did a lot of work outside the film with the kids. So every time that like a very important theme would came up, like the conflict between Vali and his father, for example, it took months of conversations of let's say unconventional research, let's say. So when the time was right, or when it felt that it was right, I just acted like a mediator, and like, you guys need to communicate these things, like among yourselves, and I can only help you by doing this. I can listen and so on. I can give an advice if that's like if I can, but the most important thing for you guys is to communicate. So it was the same case with Felicia and Vali and their baby. I didn't use hidden cameras. I didn't need that. I just told them, like, like, you're going through this together. It's an important thing, and you need to talk about this. I know you don't do it, although you live together. You don't talk about things, and I think it's going to be better for you guys to start figuring this out, like, by yourselves, and whatever decision you want to make, it's yours, and at least you agreed upon it together. So I just sat there and I let them talk, and I would sometime intervene with a question whenever I felt the need that, like, or not the need, but the opportunity for example, Vali to go a bit deeper with his feelings, like, because he's also a young man raised by a patriarch, so he's also like quite a macho guy, like, and he has his instincts, but although he's a very sensitive boy. But yeah, this is how I directed the dialogue scenes, by just offering them being a mediator, being like a therapist with the camera. So yeah.
Beautiful. Now we need to wrap up, and maybe you have a few last comments about what's next for Acasa and your partnership, a beautiful partnership between UiPath and Acasa. I know Acasa is being launched in the US. Well, so what's in store? How can we follow you?
Okay, I thought it was a question for Raluca, but yes, Acasa is going to be launched in January in the US, and until then you can You can find us in Doc NYC, which is an amazing festival, and the Hamptons Festival, which is an amazing festival as well, and on HBO Go in Europe. I'm not sure if you, but yeah, we have great plans. There's a lot of brilliant people involved in making this story as accessible as possible to the audience in the US, which is something that I'm both proud and very humbled about. So, yes.
This is amazing. Raluca, do you plan any other events, around Acasa and with Radu in the future?
Be sure that you will see a lot of us discussing the documentary and the issues around it. So we will continue with the debates. And thank you, Otilia and ARC's team, for hosting this debate. Of course, we'll stay close to Enake family and to all the kids that we work with in Romania and India, and continue our grassroots work as well with our partners. So, yeah.
Let's maybe mention the places where some of the people interested in watching our work can find us. So it's UiPath Foundation, the Facebook page, and Acasa My Home on Facebook as well. And that's where we're going to announce all our future conversations.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sorry, Otilia, you can also look at our website, uipathfoundation.com, where we update a page about the debates constantly. So stay tuned.
And we will make sure to spread the word about your work, both your work, and we're looking forward for the next project that Radu will bring to us. And again, congratulations. Thank you for being our partners for the 7th virtual edition, for being resilient together, the theme of the festival this year. And I invite our audience to watch the live Q&A at 9 p.m. Today with Mario Solteanu on his feature film Monsters. So something totally different about changes within ourselves. And I hope you can all make it. Thank you again. It was a wonderful pleasure to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with everything you do. Thank you.